Yes, good morning. I can't say that this is homecoming for me, but I must say that I always really enjoy coming to Kolkata, which we, of course, in Vodafone do on a regular basis because we have a very big operation here in this region and in the city of Kolkata. We were with my colleagues over breakfast talking about that, and I must say that if you come from abroad like I have done, then what you see is that India has, it's a very big country, it's very diverse, and it has certain images. And always, I think for most people who come to Kolkata is that the surprise is very, very big. Because for whatever reason, most people do not know much about Kolkata, and once you learn to know the people from Bengal, and you understand their culture and their sophistication of thinking, then I think I must say that this is one of the best places to be in India. So, not my homecoming, but I'm very, very happy to be here. Yeah, the theme is very wide, youth entrepreneurship. I think that more than 60% of the people in India are below 30 years. So we're actually talking about at least half the population. And of course, the youth has the future, so half the population that is going to determine how our pensions are going to look. That's what it more or less is. So how do we as businesses, how do I personally look at that category, the development? What can we do about it? I think it is all about education. That is, in my view, the most important thing. If you talk about youth, you talk about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is just a facet of youth, because not everyone becomes an entrepreneur. And not all entrepreneurs, as also you rightfully said, are sitting in the famous garage and developing the next Windows or so. A lot of entrepreneurial spirit is actually in big companies where people maybe are not, they don't become the next Mark Zuckerberg, but they can develop stuff that is really going to change the world. And you see that, for example, in our industry where there's very few like individual entrepreneurs, but there is massive development of new technologies, new applications, which in a way is very entrepreneurial. So if you talk about education and you then look specifically at India, then I think India has a problem, in my view. India has a problem in two ways. There is not enough good education. There is very good education, but the scale is not big enough for a country of the scale of India. We all know the famous institutes, and we all try to recruit from the famous institutes, the IIMs, the IITs, but the reality is there are not enough of it. There's only a few thousand people coming from these institutions every year, and if you see the enormous economic growth that India is going through, we will need a lot more very highly educated people. So I think there is a fantastic opportunity to improve education. Again, there's enough good education, but it's just not scale enough. India looks like the US from that perspective. The US has good education, but actually only very few institutions, the Harvard Business Schools, the famous names really give superior education, and then you have a massive number of business schools and universities that are actually very mediocre. And I think that's not good enough. India should strive for more and better education. Now, of course, a lot of people go abroad to study abroad. There's nothing wrong with that because it gives you also exposure to different cultures. You learn a lot. But I think there should be more opportunity for, for good, brilliant people who now actually do not have access to that quality of education. Then the second thing is, I think, the nature of the education. In my view, and it is changing, I know, and it depends on institutions, but in my view, the Indian education has, at least in the past, and probably even today, been too much about knowledge instead of actually going beyond knowledge, meaning looking more holistically at what you need to do if you come and you want to have a job. McKinsey did a study some years ago in India and said that of the graduates, only 5% is fit to work in an MNC. An MNC like Mahindra or Vodafone. And because, you know, the 95% might have a piece of paper saying that they are whatever, a chartered accountant or an engineer. it doesn't mean that they're fit to work in our companies. Why are they not fit to work in our companies? It can be a language problem, it can be an attitude problem, it can be a teamwork problem. And that is, I think, something that needs to change. The institutions need to go completely different if it comes to the way you educate people. In the past, you could educate people for working in what I call the herd. You had herds working, the conveyor belt type of factories. You can train people to become part of the herd, and it works. These days, that doesn't work anymore. You now need to train people to become part of a team. And a team is something different than a herd. In a team, everyone plays its own role, has its own individuality, and wants to contribute based on his own expertise. Where in the past, I think management told people what to do, in the new world, you will have people to tell only what to achieve, and no longer what to do or how to do. Now, that sounds a bit idealistic maybe, but I think basically that is what the youth these days wants. You give them better education, they will want more responsibility. They will want more career opportunity. Career meaning this is far more about my individual development than only the development of the total organization or the total company or the group. And we all know that the whole of Asia is basically a lot about group development, group mentality. It's about families, it's about bigger groups, which could in the past be castes or tribes or whatever, where the US and Europe has really moved away from that. It's all about the individual. Now, believe me, that is a lot more difficult to manage if you are in companies, because you have to keep all these individuals happy. You can't say, I've made the group happy. No, you have to keep all these individuals happy. So that's a big change, and I think you need to go there. You can't just say, I'm not going there, because the world is going there in terms of development, where in the past, indeed, major job creation happened in where the herds were, the big factories, the manufacturing industries, and so on. Today, that's no longer true. It's today mainly in the service industry. And if you go into the service industry, I think one of my panelist colleagues is in consulting. That's a very good example. There's a lot of consulting happening in the world, but of course you do consulting based on your own knowledge, on your own experience, on your own. You deliver, maybe in a team, but in the end you have to deliver personally a result to a customer. So that's a very different thing than being on the conveyor belt. So I think that those are a few very fundamental changes that we will need to see, in my view, in India in the future, because of the youth that is massively coming to us, and we need to create jobs for them. I think what can we do from a business perspective? I think also there is a change probably in the world where well-educated people, and the youth again, if you educate them well, they will come to that conclusion. They want two things, where maybe in the past the most important thing was to make money, and especially in India, let's face the reality, that's very high on the agenda of many people. Let's go out and make some money, isn't it? But what I think is changing is that youth is not only wanting to make money, but they want to make money by doing the right thing. Doing the right thing means that you need to create an environment that people come home and are proud of what they have done. It is not just that they are proud of the money that they have made, but they are proud of what they have done, which means sustainable development, which means doing the right thing in terms of not cutting corners. And I think that the companies that are able to create that environment will in the end attract the best talent. And I think that is important for companies like us, because we are in a very competitive industry, we are in a very fast-changing industry, and we want to attract the best, because we need the best to be able to survive in that very competitive landscape. These people have choices. They have choices today. Even if you would have a lot more good education, they will always have choices. And they have their preferences. So we have, for example, in Vodafone focused a lot on what we call the great place to work. We want to be a great place to work, because I think in the end, the well-educated young people can in the end decide where they want to go. And we all know the stories in the newspapers after the after the graduations, the big numbers that are being handed out for the first graduates in the famous named companies. I won't name them, but actually, of course, that's a very small percentage. But then there is a next layer where you have very talented people that are going to create our future, and you want the best of them. If you are Mahindra, or you are Vodafone, or you are IBM, you want the best of them. So I think for us it is very important to create an environment where people want to go because they think that they're doing the right thing, but also they create an opportunity for themselves and they see a career opportunity. We do a lot of people surveys, and there's always two things popping out of people surveys. Apart from you have 100 questions, but the real thing always pops out is, how is my manager treating me? If I'm not happy with my manager, with my boss, that is a major thing. So creating the right management culture is absolutely number one. And that is then true for nearly every individual manager. And the second thing is, what about my career? If people do not see enough development for themselves personally, you're in trouble as an industry. And that's not an easy thing, because not everyone can become the next CEO, is it? I mean, there's only one. So the pyramid is small in a way. So people are coming all there and they all want to go up, up, up. And it's very difficult to keep them all happy. But at the same time, that's the challenge that you have as management. And that's where at least we put a lot of effort by training people, putting them in the right programs. We have all kinds of programs for young people where they actually also do exchanges, sometimes for 3 months, sometimes for 2 years with jobs abroad in other Vodafone organizations. But give people exposure, give them the feeling that they grow, even if it doesn't immediately translate in a promotion, but at least give them the feeling that they keep growing. Now, a few words specifically on the telecom industry. This is, of course, an industry that has grown very fast. You've been a chairman of Unilever, I think. Now, if you realize that, I think Unilever has been more than 100 years in India. Vodafone has been there now with its predecessors, like Usha Marten here in Kolkata, or Hutchin in Mumbai. We've been less than 20 years in the country, and we are much bigger than Unilever is after 105 years. People hardly realize what that means in terms of stress on the organization. We are very serious about health and safety in our company, and one of the interesting things is we really never knew exactly how much people were working for us, because as you know, in India, there's a lot of outsourcing happening, so we have a lot of outsourced jobs happening for us. But we take responsibility as a company also for people that work in an outsourced company for us. So we started handing out what we call safety passports. A safety passport has your name, has your whatever, your driver license number, etc., etc. And for certain jobs, you need to have a certain qualification on your safety passport, otherwise you're not allowed to work, because you have to go through certain trainings to get there, which can be a driving training, which can be electrical, which can be working at height, very specific trainings. We handed out 115,000 of these passports. That gives us a pretty good idea that every day there's 115,000 people working for us in the streets. Now, how do you align 115,000 people doing the same thing in a very fast-growing industry? Because we came up in a few years, the revenues doubled every 3-4 years, size of the company doubles every so many years. So that's a real challenge. And I think this is, at the same time, the fantastic opportunity that young people have in India. You find the right balance, because you can't only do it with young people. I think the average age in our company is 32. But of course, if you would look at the senior management, that is a lot older, because you are supposed to have some experience if you get to these more senior management jobs. But it means there is a massive opportunity for young people to grow in this industry. I think the good thing, if you talk about are we doing the right thing, the nice thing about the telecoms industry is that it has created so much development, both economic development and social development, that people at least have the feeling that they are in an industry that is seriously contributing to the well-being of the country, to the development of India, and that's a good feeling. We also see that we create now, in the next wave of technology, a real facilitation platform for young entrepreneurs. Because if we move to the digital space, and it is all about it's not all, but there's a lot happening now, isn't it, in the digital space, the app world, the Googles of the world, the Facebooks of the world. Those are the new success formulas. So what we do with these young entrepreneurs who develop apps is we give them scale from day one. We have what we call a service development platform, and that is a plug-and-play platform. So a young guy, and we've seen that literally very young people, 16-year-old, develop an app. They come to us, they plug in the app, and they have the next day access to 175 million customers that we have. Now, can you imagine how could you, if you developed a product in the past, even if you have the most brilliant product, getting the distribution, getting the commercials right is a really tough task. So I think from that perspective, we also, not only in the company, but also outside the company, facilitate young entrepreneurship. I would leave it with this. Thank you.